Hi, and welcome to RBP on JSB. I'm violinist Rachel Barton Pine, and today we're going to be discussing the fourth movement of Bach's Partita No. 3 in E major, the Menuets. By the way, if you want to hear a discussion on some general topics that pertain to all of the sonatas and partitas, please be sure to watch the overview episode. So a minuet, that's a pretty common dance, unlike, a lure or something like that. Minuets, you've probably played some, if not lots, in your life thus far. And they always start on the downbeat. They're always in 3. And they often, if not almost always, follow the grouping of 2 bars, 2 bars, 4 bars. Even if it's not obvious, you can sometimes make it do that, and it really helps establish that, yes, you are listening to a minuet. Or at least it would have established that in the ears of the listeners from 1720 who knew about that. So let's see how a couple of minuets that you probably recognize do that. 2 bars, another 2 bars, 4 bars, and here's another one, 2 bars, 2 bars, 4 bars, so next time you're looking at minuets, you can check to see if they do that 2 plus 2 plus 4 thing, and I bet they probably do. It's kind of fun to, once you know about that, to start seeing it everywhere. Now, as far as the structure of having a something 1 and a something 2, you probably know the classic AABB, CCDD, AB scheme. Now, it would not have been inappropriate in the Baroque era if you really liked your whatever it is 1, in this case the minuet 1, to actually do the repeats. So AABB, CCDD, AABB, if you really like the music and have time to do it. If you don't have very much time to play this movement, by the way, you could get away with A, B, C, D, A, B, and that also would not have been illegal. So before we talk about the individual minuets, I want to mention about a particular other kind of rhythmic thing that happens. It's typical for movements in 3 to often have a big 3 superimposed upon 2 little 3s. It's called a hemiola, and instead of going 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, you're going 1 and 2 and 3 and so your beat instead of quarter notes is now half notes in this case. And there are 4 places. They're all at cadences. Well, actually, they're not all at cadences, mostly at cadences. And cadences are certainly the most common place to find hemiolas. The first 3 that I've found are indeed at cadences. First one being measure 16. So instead of 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, we have 1 and 2 and 3 and 1. It means you have to de-emphasize the second downbeat because the downbeat there is no longer a downbeat. It's just an and of the big 2. 1 and 2 and 3 and 1. Oh, it's hard to talk and play at the same time. But anyway, doing that really makes it more interesting and sounds more typically like a Baroque dance. We've got another one at the end of the minuet 1 at measure 32. 1, 2, 3, 1. Then there's one at measure 14 of the second minuet. At first it feels weird to do that if you've been used to playing it for many months or maybe even many years. And the other way. 1, 1, 1. But instead to go. First it feels awkward, but then it kind of feels funky and juicy and just, it's a much more enjoyable way to do it. There's a very obvious one at measure 22. Actually, that is a cadence. What am I talking about? Of course it's a cadence, because it cadences off at measure 24 into F minor. Yeah, so they're all at cadences. Okay, so Here, Bach's slur pattern is clearly giving you a clue that there's a hemiola there. So let's back up by a measure. See that? 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Super fun. So the characters of the two minuets are very contrasting. The first one is much more poised, maybe even a little aristocratic, like a minuet that the upper class would dance. And then the second one feels like more of a minuet of the people. It's a little more rustic and actually in a musette type of style, but we'll talk about that when we talk about it. Let's talk first about the Menuet I. And let's see, first of all, if it follows the 2 + 2 + 4 pattern of measures. So, and by the way, the phrasing often of that first two measures is going to the second measure. Or, and in our case, going to the second measure, but then kind of going on and connect, and then 4 measures. And going to the middle of the 4 measures, which is measure 3, actually in the music, of course, measure 7. So, to here as your midpoint, and then second half, well, it's not really a half, they're not very equal halves, but your B section, 2 bars in an arc shape, your next 2 bars, and then he has kind of like a bonus 2 bars thrown in there. And then your next 4 bars has a hemiola in the middle of it. And now a pickup, which is okay because it's in the middle of the minuet. We just never see a pickup leading into the start of a minuet movement. And then here he does indeed do 2 + 2 + 4 in this 8th note section. And then another. Or you could argue that perhaps there's multiple pickups. Sometimes one pickup is a clue that there should continue to be pickups, but they don't really resolve until the end of the bar, so I would argue that there aren't more pickups. That feels like it kind of, came home to A major, and then your 4 bars. Which indeed shapes to the middle. 2, 3, 4. Then we're back to another 2 + 2 + 4. And hey, look, here is a strange place that seems like Bach might have left off a slur. He slurred in measure 2, so shouldn't he slur in measure 28 to match it? Absolutely not. Matching something was actually against the aesthetic that valued variety over conformity. And furthermore, it doesn't work out. See, in the beginning, if you do it as it comes, you're back to a down bow. Then, of course, you've got some issues where you're going to be backwards, so then you might want to take 2 ups, maybe 2 ups. Here, the down, up, up, of course, is very common in minuets. Right? We all know about down, up, ups in minuets. So, it's not that all of it is as it comes, but think about it. If we start measure 27 down bow and leave off the slur that Bach left off, then we're right here at a down bow. So I think he meant it for practical purposes, first of all, because the bowings work, and meant it for aesthetic purposes, second of all, because that way you are doing something a little different. So I wouldn't add a slur and think that one is missing. and then 2 bars, and then 4 bars with a hemiola in the middle. So the only other thing to think about is, our B section, as we talked about, it's 2 plus 2 plus 2 plus 4. Then we have our eighth notes, which are 2 plus 2 plus 4, with a little pickup leading into them. And then our final section, which is 2 plus 2 plus 4. So that's the structure of the B section of our Minuet 1. But within that, the first chunk, second chunk, and third chunk are contrasted because we have chords, no chords, and then back to chords. So I would definitely make something of that. And of course here we're in minor key, C sharp minor. And then maybe make the non-chorded section just a little lighter. And then back to our, what sounds like a bit of a recap. And then a little detour into more eighth notes. And then ending more strong. But even though it's stronger and fuller and poised and all of that, not ending anything less than elegantly. Whether it's your second time of the B section, third time of the B section, final time of the B section, always elegant. So Menuet II, as I mentioned earlier, is sort of imitating the style of a musette. And musette was an actual instrument, believe it or not. See if you can find one on YouTube. They're pretty wild. A French instrument, very typical for France, though certainly similar instruments existed elsewhere, and used in operas to often denote moments of love and stuff like that. But it was a droning instrument, very light and delicate, not a big bagpipey drone or something. And so you'll get musettes, instrumental musettes, where maybe the viola da gamba will play a long drone and the violin will play over it or something like that. And very often, because of this droning effect, there's really, really long slurs in the melody part. Here's an example from Couperin. So just soft with these long-held bows. And therefore, because Bach was familiar with so much music from all over Europe, even if he had never been to some of those places himself, I can't help but think that the beginning of his Menuet II, he really did mean for you to do it all in one bow, because that's a very musette-ish thing to do. And even on the shorter Baroque bow, even when you've shortened it shortened the short Baroque bow by putting your hand a little higher to make it light and French, you can still fit it in. It works. And if it works, you probably should do it. And it makes a very special color and totally a different world than your... So think about coming from... It's so refined and delicate and magical. So really try to get used to that very slow bow control, still with a beautiful sound. And I promise you, it works on normal violins. You don't have to have a Guarneri del Gesù in your hands to make it work. So let's look at our old friend 2 plus 2 plus 4. Definitely it's happening here, even within the drone. 2 measures. And you're not going to pause, but kind of linger. You might have heard me do that when I played it. So there's your two bars, and then your 4 bar. Going to the 3rd bar. So 2 bars going towards and 2 bars going away in your 4-bar arc. And sometimes people think, well, Bach must have forgotten to put slurs in measure 5 because it's the same kind of, 2 notes in broken thirds kind of thing as happens in measure 6 where he did put slurs. But why are you going to sell him short? Because think about it, separate and then slurs. It's more complicated and more interesting, and therefore it must be true. And then after all, you have separate notes here, which you might want to do legato because it's the peak of your phrase. Here you might want to do more off the string, brushy or something. So then you just get such interesting stuff going on with the bowing, so much more interesting than if you were just nothing but that. Not nearly as fun. Okay, so 2 plus 2 plus 4, and then we have another 2 plus 2 plus 4. And then here you can still do this as a long drone for your next 2 bars. And of course it has its little arc. 1, 2, 3, 2, 2, 3. And then 4 bars with a hemiola. And he consistently left the slurs off of 13 to match 5, which I think works because it's going to something that has another different slur. All right, then we have another 2 plus 2 plus 4. And then you also would be justified in thinking that maybe in this case it's a 4 plus 4. Minuets, especially those that wouldn't have been actually danced to like this one, weren't necessarily always exactly strict. And we already saw how in Menuet I, Bach did a funky 2 plus 2 plus 2 plus 4, which you probably wouldn't have done in a minuet for dancers because they would have started to fall all over themselves. So here this might be a group of 4 starting at the D section, the B section of Menuet II, whatever you want to call it. Or you could do 2 sets of 2. Anyway, here we definitely have a set of 4 starting in 21. And then a pickup into the final 2 plus 2 plus 4. And then 2. Ooh, hey look, here's separates and slurs, 27, 28. And why do the people who add slurs in 5 not tend to add them in 27? We tend to do this one. So, yeah, Bach's just mixing it up clearly. And then our last 4. Almost like a question mark chord on that 9th, and then your answer. You could think of that as 2 bars, so maybe the last set of 8 is 2 plus 2 plus 2 plus 2, following the 4 plus 4. Hard to say. And he ends so delicately to just fit the mood of this super delicate Minuet II. Which is not a true musette because it doesn't drone all the way through, but it evokes the feel of a musette a little bit. Now I said rustic because it's, not as sort of elegant and show-offy as the Menuet one, but it's more delicate and just simple, really. The other bowing to think about, of course, is measure 25, because when we were playing measure 1 of the Menuet II underneath the drone, or for that measure 9, of course it ends up being slurred. Well. So now we have the same material without a drone, and it's very tempting to slur it. Or a lot of people slur the 4/8. But why are you doing that? Bach is taking the same material and transforming it. He's using it with, instead of kind of over a tonic chord, he's using it in a different context without a drone. So he obviously wants it to be different. So make it truly different by doing what he wrote, which is no slur. And if you do have a down bow here, of course, then you're backwards. So I keep it totally separate because I really like that. I think that's more important than coming out correctly on 26. And then it's easy enough to just pick up another up bow. And really show those little slurs so that they're truly contrasted. And here he does have a slur, but look at that. It's over in the context of a tonic in measure 29. So it makes logical sense that this one and is slurring again. Maybe if I asked Bach, he would say, "You're overanalyzing things. Of course I just forgot a slur. Of course you should slur measure 25 to match measure 29 and measure 1 and measure 9. What are you thinking? Of course I just forgot a slur." Well, we can't ask him, so we have to decide for ourselves. And certainly there's nothing wrong with adding a slur to measure 25, but please do consider whether it works for you to not add a slur. All right, those are some of my thoughts about the E major minuets. I'm Rachel Barton Pine, and this is RBP on JSB.